everybody. Welcome in. It is January 19th, 2022, and that clip, I think, summarizes what a lot of us are feeling here over the last month or so of the market, and especially over the last week. But I wanted to put out this little video and urge you to be patient. Don't be discouraged. I think things are looking very good. And also wanted to just share a little bit of my strategies that I use when I start to feel a little bit of stress or worry about my positions, and how I take care of that. So, of course, this is Digital Energy, where we talk about Bitcoin, other crypto assets, and the incredible digital revolution that's sweeping the world. And the mandatory disclosures. Nothing in this video is intended to be financial advice. This video is for informational and entertainment purposes only. You need to do your own research when you're doing your investing and make your own decisions. So let's jump right in. You know, if there's anything that we learn about human psychology, it's the fact that if we just rely on our emotions when we make our investing decisions, we're almost inevitably going to sell at the bottom and FOMO in at the top, and it's just going to be an absolute disaster. So I wanted to share just a few suggestions if you're feeling a little bit stressed and uneasy about the action in Bitcoin and other cryptos in the markets. And the first thing that I'd say is I try to have a long-term perspective when I'm investing the great bulk of my portfolio. I do reserve a little bit of funds to do some speculative, maybe swing type trading, and to me that means holding a position from 2 to 4 weeks. I do some covered call writing, some things like that, but my holdings in Bitcoin, my holdings in other cryptos primarily is long term, and by that I mean, you know, 5 years to 10 years time horizon. So when you look at it in that way, and then look back over the last several years of history, especially in the crypto markets, then I think you can rest a little easier. You don't worry so much about today's price action. My second suggestion would be that if you're not sleeping well, if you're having too much stress about your portfolio, it might be because you're over leveraged. If you're using leverage in this market, that is very, very dangerous, especially on your long-term positions. So again, I sometimes use leverage on a shorter term with much smaller portion of my investment portfolio. But with cryptos and other things, if you're leveraged, I would encourage you to de-lever. I think it'll help you sleep at night much better. I do want to say that I think, you know, like you, I am beginning to feel the tension in this particular market. We've been on a downward trend since mid-November. And now we're seeing, you know, the last week or so just bouncing in between this range. We did have a little bit of a minor capitulation, which I talked about in another video back a few days ago, which I'll link in the description below. That was when we were getting ready to observe this death cross. But I am definitely starting to feel the tension. Now, that tension may continue to build over time, but you can see, you know, we're just hovering just above this area of major support. And of course, if we do break through it, that could mean some significant moves to the downside. But I'll tell you in a minute why I just don't think that's going to happen. I do, however, believe that we're going to see some once this tension snaps, once the supply and demand battle is won by one side or the other, we're going to see some significant price movement. And one of the reasons I believe that is in this chart. This particular chart shows the estimated leverage in the market right now. This is open interest divided by the number of coins that are available, and you can see we are at the highest level we have been since April of 2019. And typically what this means to me is that there is increasing conviction on both sides of this bear bull battle. So you're seeing people open more and more leveraged positions that are bullish and bearish. Now, the number of positions, calls and puts is essentially the same because they offset each other, but it just show an increased amount of conviction on both sides. And with that conviction, once the battle is won, then you either see a short squeeze or a long squeeze, and you see some pretty dramatic moves in price. So that tells me that that is on the way at some point. Now, it could take several weeks to get there, but I think we are going to see some pretty heavy movement. Now, so you might ask then the question, well, why do I believe that that's going to be favorable? Well, I go out and take a look at the sentiment and the adoption stories that I'm seeing, and they're just all over the place. So you may have seen this story just a couple days ago. Walmart's getting into the crypto area, with their own NFT and stepping into the metaverse. That's, I think, incredibly bullish for Bitcoin and other cryptos. This was a big story about a week ago. Bill Miller, a very famous, well-known investor, disclosed that he has 50% of his personal wealth in Bitcoin. He made some great arguments in disclosing that, basically saying, look, what other asset can you find that's performed as well as Bitcoin over the last even decade? So you're seeing that. There's other stories. Mark Cuban, billionaire, getting into the space pretty heavily. You're seeing athletes, very well-known athletes, who are coming out and saying that they'll take Bitcoin instead of their salary. Aaron Rodgers, Klay Thompson, many, many more. So that is incredibly bullish. Mr. Wonderful from Shark Tank, he's been in the news quite a bit lately, talking about his plans to invest in mining stocks, Bitcoin mining stocks, and even potentially to invest or become an owner in a mining company himself. And then yesterday there was, just recently there was a story, Jack Dorsey, who's come out and said that Block, the payment rail, is looking at getting into Bitcoin mining as well. So all of this, to me, is really bullish, and so then you wonder, well, if all of this is so bullish and all of this great news about adoption is coming out in the news, why are we bouncing around? Why are we not seeing increases in price? Well, the reason is because of the Fed policy that was talked about just recently. The Fed came out, and of course we have a huge inflation, so the Fed has to do something. And so and there's basically two things that the Fed does when inflation is getting out of control, and the first thing is that they talk about raising rates, and then they might actually raise rates. And so the first step of that has happened. The notes were released. They were talking about potentially as many as 4 rate hikes this year, and they also simultaneously talked about not only just easing, quantitative easing, but cutting it back, reducing the balance sheet. Those two things have scared the market quite a bit. And then there's some world news. I mean, the Russia-Ukraine situation is troublesome, and so there's some uncertainty out there. But I will say, as far as the Fed goes, I just, with the situation that we're in, the amount of debt that the United States government has amassed over the last, especially 2 years, and for essentially the decade before that, I just don't believe the Fed is going to be able to be that aggressive at raising rates and reducing their balance sheet. They may talk about it and hope that the talk is going to suppress some of this action, suppress and slow down some of this inflation. But I think definitely I would expect a 0.25% interest rate coming up here in March. But I think that the markets will react badly to that, and if they see both bond market and the stock market selling off, I think that they're going to capitulate and maybe talk about raising rates, but not continue to do so. So, long story short, I do think things look very good for Bitcoin. Um, we may bounce around in this range for quite some time, maybe as much as a month, 2 months. But I think that we're going to hold. We are going to hold this line. And, of course, I could be wrong, but I truly do believe that we are going to hold this line. And once we have defended it, and either the market loses interest or gets bored with the narrative of the Fed and some of the world issues, I think you're going to see the price snap to the upside, and that would trigger a short squeeze, squeezing all of these short positions out and getting some really dramatic price increases. So won't give you any targets, but I do think the next levels of resistance will be 48,000, then into the 50,000, and if we pass through 50,000, I think you're going to see a good run at breaking the all-time high. So keep your powder dry. Keep some in reserve to dollar cost average on the way down, dollar cost average on the way up. Perhaps take a little bit of profit on the top so you have some money to play with the next time we have a bit of a pullback. And stay positive. Don't trade on emotion. This is Brett with Digital Energy. Protect yourself out there.